All right, welcome to Wednesday Workshop. Today we are going to focus on this really great article titled Sneaker Nation. You may have already read this during our asynchronous lesson. We're going to take a second look at it and we're going to talk about a couple of things that we need to address for some skills as a sixth grader. And those two topics are author's purpose and author's perspective. Let's talk about author's purpose first. So, when a writer writes, there's usually a reason that a writer writes, there's a purpose for it. And when you're thinking about texts that you read in school, there are usually three main reasons why authors write. And we can use the acronym PIE, PIE, to help us remember what those three reasons are that authors write. The P stands for persuade. And like we talked about with Dr. King's I Have a Dream speech, his purpose in writing that speech was to persuade the audience to agree with him and to think in terms of having civil rights fair for everyone in the country. And he certainly did a good job. The second reason why authors write is to inform their audience, to give them information, to teach them something. And a lot of the articles of the week that we've been reading so far this quarter have been to inform. Think about the Halloween article that we read. It was all informational about the history of Halloween. So it wasn't trying to persuade us to think a certain way. It was just giving us information. And that was the purpose of that one. And the third author's purpose is the E in PIE, and that stands for entertain. So a lot of times authors just want to write things to entertain you. A lot of picture books are this way. A lot of novels, fiction books that you like to read are this way. The Watsons Go to Birmingham is of course, the author wants to entertain you. He wants to keep you interested in reading it, but it also is a little informational as well because you do learn some facts about history. So that's what's different about historical fiction because it's sometimes two different reasons why authors write. So persuade, inform, and entertain are the three main reasons why authors write. So we call that author's purpose. Just remember PIE. And then the second term I want you to be familiar with is author's perspective. Perspective is just how an author feels about the topic he or she is writing about. And when you talk about feelings or emotions, you can categorize them into three different words. They're either going to be positive, negative, or neutral, which means it's neither positive or negative. So when you pick a topic that you're going to write about, you might feel positive about it. Maybe you're going to write about what you're going to do over spring break, that you would have a positive perspective on that. Maybe you want to write about you want to have more privileges at home and you're writing something to persuade your parents to give you more responsibility and you just kind of want to grow up a little bit and you feel kind of negative about how many rules that you have to follow or something like that. That would be more of a negative perspective. So think about the author that wrote the article and then think about the topic and then ask yourself, how did the author feel about that topic? Was it positive, negative, or neutral perspective? So those are the two terms I want you to keep in mind as we're reading Sneaker Nation today, author's purpose and author's perspective. So on your desk, you should have a copy of the Scope magazine and go ahead and open up to the article. I believe it's on page, you could probably find it faster than me. It's on page, looks like page 10. And you see all sorts of visuals, images, Michael Jordan. You can kind of preview the text. That's what good readers do. If you flip to the second page of the article, there's another text feature, got a photo with a caption next to it called Magic Ingredient. So we're just going to read pages 11 and 12. It's not a long article, but I want you to be thinking about the topic, of course, is sneakers, but think about the author's purpose. Why do you think the author wrote this article? And then the perspective. What do you think the author's perspective is about sneakers? So you just read in your magazine along with me as we go through this article. So it's titled Sneaker Nation: How a Humble Athletic Shoe Became an American Icon. So we've got the main title and then a subtitle underneath. It gives us just a little bit more information about what this article is going to be about. It sounds like a history lesson in sneakers, how the athletic shoe became an American icon. So it's written by Mackenzie Caro. It was April 1985, and everyone was talking about Michael Jordan. The 6'6" basketball player from North Carolina was nearing the end of his first season in the NBA, and he was already a star. He was strong yet nimble, fast yet graceful, fiercely competitive yet cool under pressure. His brilliant moves on the court were quickly becoming legendary. But that April, it wasn't just Jordan's extraordinary athletic skill that everyone was buzzing about. There was something else that no one could stop talking about: his sneakers. Global obsession. Jordan's sneakers were called Air Jordans. Nike had designed the shoes for Jordan after he agreed to endorse a new line of basketball sneakers for the brand. The first Air Jordans were red and black, far flashier than what the NBA players wore at the time. To keep a uniform look on the court, the league rules at the time required that shoes be at least 51% white. After the NBA pointed out, Nike has designed a version with a little more white for Jordan to wear in the games. When Jordans went on sale in April of 1985, they flew off the shelves. In just 1 year, Nike made $126 million on Air Jordans alone. No other sneaker in history had been as lucrative. Think about that word lucrative. What do you think that means? If you thought money or made a bunch of money, that's exactly what lucrative means. It made a lot of money for them. The wildly successful launch of Air Jordans marked a turning point in our relationship with sneakers. What was once simply a comfortable, practical shoe had become a global obsession. Obsession means everybody was interested in it. And there's Michael in his Jordans. Pretty cool. Playing for the Chicago Bulls. All right, we're going to move into from luxury to necessity. Today, sneakers are a $58 billion industry. There are hundreds of styles, colors, and brands to suit our every outfit and mood. For most of us, sneakers are an essential and beloved part of not just our wardrobe, but our lives. It hasn't always been this easy, though. In the mid 1800s, when the first sneakers were created, they were considered luxury items. The canvas, rubber soled shoes were expensive and meant for playing croquet and tennis. Only the very wealthy had time for such recreational activities. As the turn of the century approached, this began to change. Many employers were cutting back on working hours, leaving Americans with more free time. Meanwhile, new public parks, gyms, and tennis and basketball courts were springing up across the country. This meant that more Americans could play sports and exercise during their time off. It also meant that more Americans needed sneakers. Fortunately, improvements in manufacturing were making sneakers less expensive. By the 1920s, most people could afford a pair. Still, it would be decades before the sneakers transformed into the coveted fashion item that is today. A winning combination. The sneaker industry as we know it today began to take shape in the 1970s. That's when companies started pumping out a variety of styles and colors to appeal to a wider range of needs and personalities. Now, you could go get Nikes in electric blue, Pumas in striking yellow, and Adidas with candy apple red stripes. Advertising was changing too. Companies began zeroing in on the most talented athletes and enlisting them to market new designs. In 1973, Puma released a signature shoe, the Puma Clyde, for basketball star Walt Clyde Frazier. Not only was Frazier a superstar player for the New York Knicks, but he was also consistently found on best dressed lists. Puma's collaboration with Frazier linked the worlds of fashion and professional basketball to create a top selling product. But the sneaker industry didn't hit its stride until the Air Jordans. Sneakers like the Puma Clyde were popular among diehard fans of basketball and fashion, particularly in urban areas like New York City, but Air Jordans were popular among everyone everywhere. After all, Michael Jordan was one of the greatest athletes in the world. Everyone knew his name. High profile athletes are only part of the sneaker story, though. Elizabeth Semmelhack from Bata Shoe Museum in Toronto, Canada, says music played a big role too. For example, in 1986, the hip hop group Run DMC, known for sporting Adidas superstars, released a song titled My Adidas. I remember that song, y'all, from the 80s. Adidas sales spiked, and the group signed a $1 million endorsement deal. An endorsement deal means they got Adidas paid them $1 million just to use their song in their ads. Pretty cool. It was these kinds of collaborations with athletes and artists, explained Semmelback, that created the cultural obsession with sneakers and continues to this day. What you end up with is this incredible mixture of basketball, hip hop and rap, dance and fashion, says Semmelback. And that sets the groundwork for what continues to be some of the magic of sneakers today. And then there's this image here. This is a very interesting fact about sneakers. So you see this tree, look, a little bucket, and there's something in the bucket, and there's an arrow to the sole of the sneaker. Let's read and find out what this is all about. The magic ingredient. The rubber tree grows in South and Central America. For centuries, people there have been using its milky sap to create waterproof footwear. In the 1800s, scientists began experimenting with the material, but it was expensive and tricky to work with. Then, in 1839, inventor Charles Goodyear figured out how to produce a more manageable kind of rubber. This rubber would be used to make everything from tires to erasers to eventually the bottoms of sneakers. It was flexible, waterproof, and wouldn't slip on grassy fields or slick basketball courts. So that is where rubber comes from, y'all. It comes from a tree. I didn't know if you knew that or not, but that is pretty cool to think about. Like precious gems, this is the last section. Yes, this is it. By the end of the 1980s, sneaker sales had reached $12 billion, having nearly doubled since the start of the decade. By the 1990s, sneakerheads were collecting sneakers like precious gems. Sneaker releases had become highly anticipated events, with hordes of customers camping out hours before stores opened. Kids began saving up for months to buy the latest designs. Since then, our obsession has only grown. With the brands dreaming up new styles and collaborations all the time, that obsession will likely continue. Meanwhile, Air Jordans remain one of the most popular sneakers of all time. In fact, this past August, Nike revived the original Air Jordan design and released it in new colors. The shoes were, of course, a wild success. All right. So that's the end of the article. We're going to go, I'm going to go back to the beginning. If you would flip back to the beginning in your magazine, and on your behind your menu today, there is a second sheet of paper, and I would like you to take that paper and a pencil, and we're going to take a look at the questions that relate to this article and do these together, okay? So at the top of the paper, we have some key words that we've been studying. Topic, what the article is mainly about. This article is mainly about what? Sneakers, right? So let's go ahead and answer that question. That was easy. And you can just put in the word sneakers. That's what the topic is of this article. What is the central idea? Now remember, the central idea is the author's main point about the article. So you could say the author explains the history of sneakers. That's the central idea. That's mainly what this article is about. He gets into lots of details like Michael Jordan and Adidas and Run DMC and all that, but it's really just the history of the sneaker. Number 3, how does the timeline at the bottom of page 11 help you understand the article better? So let's go and look at that on page 11 at the bottom. You can see it says sneaker stories. It says before sneakers, in ancient Greece, the birthplace of the Olympics, athletes competed barefoot or in special leather shoes. And then it goes into basketball stars. Converse released the first widely used basketball sneaker, All-Star, in 1917. I own a pair of All-Stars to this day. It's pretty cool that they've been around since 1917. And then we have breakfast sneakers. In 1974, Bill Bowerman, co-founder of Nike, invented um, a sole inspired by the grid-like pattern of the waffle. This so-called waffle trainer revolutionized the sneaker industry. Sorry, y'all, I'm not wearing my glasses. I'm having a hard time reading. So it has that waffle-looking sole. Breakfast sneakers, I guess that's why they're called breakfast sneakers, because of the waffle sole. And then it says devoted sneaker fans. In 2005, a crowd camped out in front of New York City store for 3 days waiting for the limited release of Nike's Pigeon Dunk. That's interesting. And then the last one, sneaker art. Good luck wearing these Nikes on the court. They're covered in pure gold. Price tag $5,000. So the timeline, does it help you understand? I would say, yeah, it helps me understand the article better. Yes, because it gives all sorts of different examples of how the sneaker has evolved. Different examples of how the sneaker has, and I want you to use the word evolved, EVOLVED. That means how it's grown over time. All right, I'm going to highlight that in yellow so you can see it a little bit better. All right, the next question. How many headers does this article have? We're talking about text structure now. If you look, hint, hint, they're in blue. We have 1, 2, 3, 4 headers, which makes 4 different sections of the article. So there are 4 sections. Each section has its own header, which is like a little title for that paragraph or that section. What is the magic ingredient in sneakers? So the magic ingredient, if you look on page 12, it's in that next to the picture of the rubber tree, we're going to say rubber. Before they had, there was rubber invented, sneakers were not as effective because the rubber really helped the athletes stay safe on the courts in slick areas. So that was the magic ingredient that really helped. So let's talk about the author's purpose. What is the reason the author wrote this article? Was it to inform you, the reader, about something? Was it to explain something? Let me change that. That should be persuade. Y'all, scratch that word out and put in the word persuade. That was a little mistake. Was it to persuade you to agree with something, to change your mind maybe about something, or was it mainly just to entertain you? Think about it. It's really kind of like the history of sneakers. I think the inform is probably the best answer for the author's purpose. It's informational. You're learning some things about the history of sneakers. Number 7, what is the author's perspective? Remember, that's the author's feelings towards the topic. And it sounds like the author has a very positive perspective about sneakers. Gives lots of positive examples in this text about sneakers and how important they are to our lives. So which sneakers are the most popular of all time? Said it right at the end. Air Jordans. Those are the most popular sneakers of all time. Thank you, Michael Jordan, for that. And then number 9, how much money does the sneaker industry make now? Well, I'm gonna have to go back and look. I know it was a lot. I'm looking on page. I'm looking. Mm, I'm skimming, I'm scanning, I'm still reading. Maybe you found it before me. Oh, I remember it at the beginning of a section, but I'm not sure what section. Oh, I see it. In the section from luxury to necessity on page 11, if you look at that first sentence, it says today sneakers are a $58 billion industry. So put your dollar sign 58 billion, not million, billion. Huge industry. And then number 10, last question. Which fact from the article do you think is the most important in the success of the sneaker? I'm going to let you answer that question on your own because this is more of an opinion question. But tell me, which fact do you think is the most important to the success of the sneaker? Um, I have my opinion, but I'm not going to share it with you because I want to hear what your opinions are. So finish that up, answer that question on your paper, and you are done. You can check this off on your menu, and you can move on to the next um, activity on your workshop menu. Good job, y'all.